Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to the Lower Gwinnett Township Board of Supervisors regular public meeting for Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. The Board of Supervisors did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss matters of real estate, potential litigation, and personnel. There will be a Board of Supervisors meeting on Monday, July 29th at 6 p.m. at the Township Building, and it will be via Zoom in conjunction with a public auction at the Ingersoll House property. Wanted to open up public comments, to citizen comments, questions, or concerns for items that are not on the agenda. No one? Okay. Next up on our agenda is consideration of Resolution 2024-21, approving a 2-lot subdivision plan for 1616 Schoolhouse Lane. I don't know if there's any presentation. Did you have any presentation that you would like to make?
I think it's on. Is it on? Good evening, Kristen Pianzio from Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin. No further presentation. You've heard enough at your last meeting. Your solicitor did forward a resolution, the terms of which are acceptable to my client. He has signed it and returned it for your consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So included in our board packet was a memorandum from Assistant Township Manager outlining the resolution, the conditions of the resolution, and the recommendation from staff that the resolution be approved. Included also in our board packet is a copy of the resolution. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-21. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion does carry. Thank you. You as well. Next up is consideration to initiate a zoning ordinance amendment along with legal notice to update our regulations regarding small cell wireless facilities in the right of way. Included in our board packet was a recommendation from, wait a minute. There's a memorandum from our Assistant Township Manager that goes over the proposal of the amendment and the authorization to advertise. Do you have any, are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to advertise the zoning ordinance amendment to advertise the legal notice to update regulations regarding small cell wireless facilities and right of way. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion does carry. Thank you. Next up is general business, and there is consideration of a submission of a letter to support the petition of the boroughs, a handful of boroughs, to the PA Public Utility Commission for the issuance of a declaratory order. There is information in our packet. I do believe that we have Bill Sapie here to answer comments. If you wanted to come up, sir.
I did want to provide an introduction, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is Ree Monahan. I just wanted to provide a brief introduction regarding Bill's work and what led up to this this proposal being submitted to the supervisors. But if you prefer skipping that and Bill can begin with his presentation, that's fine.
If you want to provide a very brief introduction, feel free.
Okay, great. Well, first I want to extend a warm thank you to Bill for presenting to the township regarding community choice aggregate, or CCA. Bill has been an active and dedicated advocate for environmental issues and climate change mitigation strategies by working with municipalities, environmental advisory councils, nonprofit organizations, and many other partners. Bill is one of the leaders of the CCA for PA Working Group, as well as the volunteers lead for Monco Ready for 100, which we'll probably address at a future meeting. Bill works with many groups to organize and conduct regular Zoom and in-person meetings, along with community events and public events, and teaches municipalities and the public regarding initiatives and opportunities available. Specific the CCA, this allows governments to procure power on behalf of their residents, businesses, but I'll let Bill go into more detail regarding that. And without further ado, thank you so much, Bill, for your efforts.
Thank you, Rhea. Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm from Plymouth Township. I was on my environmental board since 2009 till last year, and then I'm taking a break during this year off. But I've been involved with the CCA for PA Boroughs Working Group for about 2 years. And what we're trying to do is to raise this up to the Public Utilities Commission to allow boroughs to purchase electricity on behalf of their constituents and to start integrating a renewable energy percentage that is higher than what the default grid mix supply is provided by PECO or your electric utility provider. So this petition is really just asking the PUC to allow this under current borough authority, which is already in Pennsylvania code. We believe this is permitted, but we just want to make sure that there's no confusion by any challenges or other interpretations of it than what the PUC would allow. So that's why we were asking for them to actually declare this as being permissible under existing code. So we're asking for letters of support from similar Ready for 100% clean energy communities like you. There's 44 of us in the Southeast Pennsylvania region, 19 of us in Montgomery County. And so we felt like this was a good support group to ask to, support this ask of the PUC. So a lot of this information had been provided in your packet. I'm really here to answer questions and provide any background that you would like. So feel free to ask what you'd like to ask.
So I just start off saying thank you for bringing this to our attention and being willing to come to our meeting tonight. And we are Ready for 100 municipality. I think some of the concerns that just come to mind initially is that this isn't our form of government. We're not a borough. We don't operate within the CAA. We don't offer electricity to our residents. Even some of our neighboring boroughs or some communities that are boroughs do not offer electricity. It would be us inserting ourselves in a level of government that's not applicable to a second-class township. And while we may support on the face of it as individuals, Ready for 100, all of the principles and all of the things that you're indicating and all of the things that would be in a letter, it would be akin to us inserting ourselves into a level of government that wouldn't be applicable to us as it relates to any matter. So while we could provide a letter of support in theory, it wouldn't provide a lot of credence because we're a second-class township. We don't have the authority, and it seems like this is a legal proceeding. So in addition, it's not a petition, it's as much of it's a legal proceeding that you would be going for with the PA Public Utility Commission. that having the support of a second-class township who has no authority, who has no standing, who isn't a party to this in any respect, I don't know how that would be applicable.
Yeah, I think what we feel is that any letters of support, because it's a public docket that's on the PUC website, so anyone can provide a letter of comment or, pro or for or against.
Mhm.
And so by asking for supportive comments and this letter of support, even though townships won't benefit from this, the idea is that we're trying to show that we have enough interest from the public to pursue this for townships subsequently. So we'd like to see this engaged for boroughs initially, and then come back and ask for it to be increased to allow townships to participate. So you're right, while it doesn't directly affect you or you or them, I think just by showing the volume of support, by putting these comments forward to them would be helpful for showing this interest from all our Ready for 100 communities.
You're not asking, just to confirm, you're not asking us as individuals, you're asking for this government body.
I was asking for the government body just because we feel that that's a larger entity. By representing your goals to reach 100% clean electricity, you're also interested in this being able to push Pennsylvania forward and reaching higher and higher goals of renewable electricity in order to help you meet your goals. So that's why we wanted it done as an official body.
Are there any additional questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I'd like to remind the board that the EAC has given their support behind this letter from the township. And I agree with Bill. I think we as individual citizens or residents can write letters of support. There's nothing stopping us. But as a RF 100 municipality, I think it's important for us to show our support for this regulation going forward.
Can I ask a question about the CCAs themselves? So is the construct, is that the opt-out construct? In other words, everybody's in unless you affirmatively opt out. Is that how you're proposing it, or is that created before you proposed?
That's part of the proposal, because right now boroughs apparently can ask all of their constituents to take their power supply. So they'd already have an opt-out mechanism within their code. And to be able to help this work more effectively, we find that opt-out would strengthen the ability to purchase more electricity, or renewable portion of electricity, because of the volume of accounts. What they found in New York, who is the administrator we're working with to help us on this, they find out that in an opt-out program, people who opt out is probably, 3 to 5%. Whereas an opt-in program, it's of the reverse. It's only like 2 to 3%. So the idea is you wouldn't have enough accounts to really be able to leverage your purchasing power in order to buy a renewable electricity. So the reason why it wants to be an opt-out is to be able to leverage those higher number of accounts. So
I get the reason for it. I mean, in just about everything, whatever the status quo is, it's harder to change. So I get it. You want to keep the status quo and have the opt-out. I mean, my concern with that structure, with that construct, is no matter what education program you do, people will just ignore it. I mean, they'll wind up getting into something that they hadn't anticipated. And the getting into something is changing the status quo without sort of their knowledge. Not that you wouldn't educate. Of course, that's what any of the municipalities is going to do, but it's like, switching your cable or switching your insurance. People just don't switch. And that's what worries me about an opt-out program, because it's basically mandatory for everyone unless you take an affirmative step.
right. And the goal in the implementation plan is that working with the borough will set the criteria for what the purchase amount and price target will be for the electricity purchase. So the borough officials will be in full control over what purchase amount and cost they acquire for their constituents. So there is built-in protections here to make sure that nobody is taken advantage of, that the borough does have full control over choosing the price.
Right, I'm just saying the individual doesn't have that control because they're gonna opt in unless they affirmatively opt out.
So the very first likelihood would be to match Pico's default service. We could purchase the same grid mix that Pico is purchasing and offer the same price. So nobody would change their price. It'd be up to the borough to decide, do we start off with just giving the existing grid mix of electricity that everybody's getting by default from Pico, and then we don't challenge our constituents with any difference in price. And if they choose to go to PA Power Switch, they would pay a different cost to an electricity provider. So it's always up to the borough to make sure their constituents are fairly, have the full control over what they want for their electricity purchase.
Right, they're ceding that, the individuals are basically ceding that negotiation to the borough as opposed to
Well,
making the decision on their own.
it's the same as Pico. Right now, anybody who comes into a territory ends up getting Pico's default mix. So we aren't really offering anything different than what Pico would be offering. So there is really no one being taken advantage of or having a choice other than what Pico
Well,
is
you
offering.
now you can go on and choose whatever you want. I mean, like I can go on and choose whatever providers I want, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
switched plenty
Yeah,
of times with this.
that's very true. And that's what we're shooting for, is that everyone will have full choice. So they have the choice to pick the borough's chosen grid mix. And right at the default, the borough could choose the default grid mix that Pico is, so the price will be the same. Or they can say you can go to PA Power Switch and pick your own supplier. So there is really full control for all constituents to have the best choice for what they want for their electric supply.
Right, but I'm saying if they don't, if the constituent doesn't make a decision, they're getting whatever the borough's selling, whatever they've chosen, right?
Which
Because
could,
it's opt in.
which could
Or
match,
rather, it's opt out.
which could match the same as Pico. So if the borough is concerned about that, then the borough would choose the same mix as Pico, and then the constituent would not have any different effect on their electricity price than what they're getting from Pico. If you move into Pico territory, you take their default mix. So the borough could simply say, we're just going to start off with Pico's default mix, and you won't really have any negative impact on your constituents. If a constituent then wants to go to a different electric provider by PA Power Switch, they have full option to do that. So we aren't restricting anybody from choosing the best electric supply for themselves.
Any additional comment from the board?
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Bill, hi, I'm Mimi Gleason, the township manager. So I'm always curious about the implementation side of this.
Yeah.
How do the boroughs decide what provider they want to go with or what mix they're looking for?
So one of the things in the implementation plan is that there will be an administrator, which is the company we started with Jewel from New York, who's already been doing this. So they have a lot of experience. And one of the first things they do is work with the borough to decide what is the grid mix that you want, what are the cost structure, what is the renewable energy structure you want. So you put out an RFP then to say, we are buying this amount of power for our constituents. And that RFP will go out to all the electric service providers, electricity supply generators in Pennsylvania, and they will bid on that. So you will get the best price based on your criteria for your RFP. And then once that is decided upon, then they go out and acquire the power for you.
So the borough pays this administrator to do all of that stuff,
That's
have
it.
the expertise, put the RFP together, and you so you got to find a good administrator that you're comfortable with, that you
Yes.
trust, because that's Greek to most people.
Yes, exactly. And that's built into the implementation plan and clearly defined in the petition. So they have a lot of experience, and what we're relying on is the ability for them to help us educate our public. Because you're right, the very first thing you're asked about is the ability to be switched or not switched for your supply. We feel that's very important, that every constituent be given a fair knowledge of what they're choosing. And right now, the opt-in, opt-out is you only have a 3-day period from your choice to rescinding your choice. we're giving people 30 days. So there will be a really strong education campaign to go out to all your constituents and say, hey, guys, we're going to be putting this electricity supply together for everyone. We're giving you 30 days. Here's a lot of good information on what your choices are, and we will help you answer any questions about that. So we feel it's a very fair, open process for a borough.
Just for clarification for this petition, this is the boroughs, based on your analysis of your group, you think the boroughs already have authority under state law to do this, not second-class townships, but boroughs. So you're asking, so this would be an administrative law judge or the Public Utility
Right,
Commission to,
The PUC, I think, has enough ability in their own, staff to determine the logistics for this, to say, yes, this does fit with code. So we would be making a declaratory order that this is now incorporated in the existing code. We don't feel any conflicts with it. That's what we're hoping for. We're just going to rectify a couple sentences in our code to include this. So that's really what the most optimal outcome we're looking for.
does it go to an administrative law judge first and then the whole Public Utility Commission will?
I think the
a
commission
decision.
actually decides on this themselves. So they'll be reviewing it because they have their own internal lawyers and staff that can review these things, and they will determine whether it's something they feel comfortable authorizing. Yeah.
I have a question, and I apologize because I don't have my iPad, so or computer, and things are not in the right place. I can't see the letter itself that that you're requesting that we sign. I see the petition.
It's at the
You
very
want to take a
bottom.
quick look at it?
Yeah, it's at the bottom. Is it after the petition?
Yes, keep going. It's at the very bottom.
I see like the Google.
Yeah.
Doc.
But no, those are, it's in our, we don't.
It's in our,
pack.
it's in our.
I know, I don't, it's probably not.
I think it's this,
Oh,
I
you
think it's
printed
this
it all
one.
out. Yeah, keep going.
After?
Yeah, that's the that's the petition, right? Following this is that, no.
I just want to see it.
Let's just start here. This is the petition.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Google
yeah.
Doc.
And if you
123,
keep
it's
going back, there's like,
123.
at the end, there's,
Uh,
okay.
Bill,
No.
while we're sorting
So-
that out with Janine,
Say,
what is the anticipated,
Oh, no, you don't.
once this goal is met, which we all hope it will be, what is the next step for your
120.
organization to then try to expand out to the
just the
second class
goals, that's all.
townships?
Sorry, I'm just distracted a little here.
That's the letter. It's
I'm
in
not
there,
very
it's
sure
the
this is
last.
what
Is this,
We're gonna-
this is the letter of support. Did you see this?
Yeah,
it's in our- I
have it in my.
It's a.
Okay.
I have that.
I'm
Oh,
not crazy.
that, keep, yeah, that's
Right
it.
here.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, I just wanted to.
Sorry, Tessie. So the deadline for comments is August 5th.
Mhm.
So we're expecting, we're going to put our letters of support forward next week for this. And then we don't know how long it'll take the PUC to decide. Hard to tell what their calendar is like, whether they're going to rule right away or whether they're going to need a few weeks to absorb all the comments.
They don't have a deadline?
No, to make a decision, no. Because all these public comments will be submitted by the 5th. And they need time to review all of the comments that have publicly been submitted. So there will be a period of time from August 5th until they get through that review and they have a chance to make a ruling. I don't have a good way of predicting that.
Yeah. Now, one thing I like about this CCA, if it should ever come to townships like ours, is that we have the opportunity to actually decrease the price for citizens versus what it is now. So I think that's a really important goal to keep in mind. Not only would it potentially decrease the renewable resources, electricity sources to everyone, so not just people who can afford it like it is now, but also it will encourage competition within Pennsylvania to create more renewable resources, electricity. So I think that if we support this, if we can support this as a township, it lets the PUC know how important this goal is, even though it wouldn't affect us immediately, it potentially will down the line. So I just would reiterate my support for this.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that in Pennsylvania right now, the alternative energy portfolio standard is very low. We're kind of the last state to make a higher percentage requirement. There's been a bill proposed to increase that, but we don't know when that will happen. So the idea of renewable energy being able to be your provider of electricity generation, we're finding that with solar panels getting more and more efficient and larger arrays being, built, that the cost of electricity, the base cost of electricity does come down, and it's starting to trend down below what the cost of natural gas generated electricity is, which is one of the third largest in Pennsylvania is our natural gas supply. And we're finding that the cost of natural gas is varying pretty widely. Plymouth's electric rate changed from 4 cents a kilowatt hour, it's 4.3 cents a kilowatt hour to 6.3 cents a kilowatt hour just last November, an increase of 37%. So we feel that by investing in renewable electricity generation, townships will be able to give themselves a better control over their budgets because there'll be less variation in their electricity costs going forward. So that's another big incentive for this CCA is to get that started, because once we get enough constituents in all these boroughs working together, we can start building solar farms. And then once we build solar farms, we'll be able to lock in such a low rate that will give those boroughs a very comfortable, level that they'll know that they don't have to change their budget for years. For 20 to 30 years, that rate will be fixed.
Mr. Saby, can I just ask a clarifying question? The borough code currently is indicating that PA boroughs are the only municipality that has the authority to implement a CCA. Wouldn't it take a legislative codifying statute to allow second-class townships or anything outside of a borough to implement or form a CAA?
Well, that would be our initial thought, but we did put in the petition the idea to say that if you agree with this for boroughs, it's a very natural fit to allow for all municipalities within Pennsylvania. So,
But it
the PUC
explicitly doesn't indicate that any other municipality beyond a borough, who is the only one that explicitly has the authority right now, would then be granted authority to operate a CCA.
we can give the PUC some hope that they could see behind the scenes and say, yes, we think that this is such a good thing for boroughs. We agree that now it should be enabled for all townships. We could hope.
The PUC does, they don't have that authority.
They could.
No, they don't
could
have
think
that.
it's the greatest idea in the world, but they can't change, that's the legislature.
The
has to change
legislature
what a
identifies,
second-class township
yeah,
can do.
the rights and responsibilities of different municipalities. So it's defined and codified in ordinance. So the PUC wouldn't have the authority to actually dictate what a second-class township versus a borough or a first-class township has the ability to do. I understand what you're saying by keeping the broadest umbrella open, but I don't think that that's going to change the type of government that we have and the authority that we have to act as this type of government. I guess my other question would be, there's 7 boroughs that have signed on, but some of our near close neighbors that are boroughs to do provide electricity have not signed on. Is there any explanation as to why?
I think the amount of time it took to educate these boroughs, we've been working on this for 2.5 years.
2.5
Narberth
years?
was probably the first one to get excited by this. And then each of them have taken, a few months or more to help understand, for themselves that they wanted to do this. So, we've reached out to quite a few boroughs in the area. I can't say we've reached out to every single one. I think, the people in the working group who had relationships, we started with those, and we started with some of the ones that were ready for 100 because we knew they would be interested.
Mhm.
So that's really why we started. And Swarthmore, Media, and Narberth are, three of the big,
Yeah.
are ready for 100 groups. And we'll continue the conversation going forward. We were trying to tempt people to join this, but before we said, hey, we're hoping to put this petition forward. Any of you still want to get in on this, while we can? Because one of the thoughts is that the PUC could just limit this ruling to these 7. We're hoping they'll open it up to all boroughs, but the other choice they have would be to say, oh, hey, we'll give you guys a chance to try this out among these 7. And then the other boroughs would have to wait. So that would
Do you
be one-
believe that the PUC has the authority to limit the rights that they have declared or agreed to only a handful of boroughs, or make it applicable to all boroughs?
That's,
Because I
that's,
believe they don't have the authority, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer. But I don't think that they have the regulatory authority to limit some decision that they've made to only a handful of boroughs.
except if this petition is a declarative order for these 7 boroughs, I guess they could just say, hey, we're going to give these 7 boroughs the first pass at this, and then we'll decide, so that they have several layers of choice they can make.
Okay.
Um,
Has there been any additional municipalities that are not boroughs that have signed on to the letter thus far?
I know Springfield Township EAC is meeting tonight to make a recommendation to their officials. Abington EAC met last week and motioned it forward to their officials. Upper Merion EAC motioned it forward to their officials. And Lower Merion is also meeting tonight. EAC is motioning it forward to their officials. So the only township I'm aware of is in Chester County. Euclid Township signed a letter of support. But other than that, we're trusting that these 4 or 5 EACs that are working on it will still get it in by next month. So we love your support. We don't think it would be in conflict with your intentions, and we do feel that every public comment to the PUC is worthwhile to show interest in motivation to help them feel that, yes, their citizens are looking forward to something like this to really help move the needle forward on renewable electricity.
Okay. Any additional questions from the board?
I just have one more question. The deadline. Why does this need to be decided by next week? Is that because that one?
The petition was opened up on July 5th or 6th, and I think the PUC has a 30-day 30-day public comment period. So I think right now the 30 days is August 5th.
Okay.
So we would really like the letters of support in by that time. There are some municipalities where their officials weren't meeting the last 2 weeks of July. So we said, well, if you can still get your letter of support in by August, we will still hold it because it may still be valuable when we go to the next step to start engaging this conversation for townships. Yeah.
Okay.
For clarification, we did get a request from Bill earlier, and there's just been a whole flurry of emails amongst the EAC to try to figure out how to approve for the EAC to give their thumbs up on this without having a public meeting and
Yeah, no, I was just asking because I thought
Vote.
maybe it was like we could file something later. Personally, my concern is I just don't feel like I have enough information. This is the first time I've even ever heard of it. So that's my concern is, that's why I wanted to see the actual letter, that we would be,
And that at least that hard copy is the letter that we had asked, and we did give everyone the option to write your own version of that. So if the language is a little different, or you like to tweak the language, then you definitely have that option to put your own version of it. And we just wanted to provide this as a base point for people to be able to start with.
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Sabi, you said you've been doing this for 2 years. I know our EAC didn't meet in July, but had you brought it to them prior to?
You know, I guess we were a little late to think that we should start educating townships on this because we were so focused on educating boroughs. And maybe we were a little bit nervous that if we got too far out in front of this, that if the word started getting out that they're trying to sell this to townships, and that got to the PUC or others that were, concerned about our approach, we felt it was fair to be able to just go with the existing authority for boroughs, focus on that, find a set of boroughs that really wanted to help get this started. And then we want to engage townships. It's just that we were a little late to the game to know we were going to only, I guess when we were thinking about this in April, we said, oh yeah, we're going to put this to the PUC. We weren't thinking ahead, say, well, do we want townships to sign on until the last minute? And then by the time we got that letter out to you guys, July meetings were already underway. So we realize it's an ask, but we do feel that we're trying to help you at least feel comfortable that as a Rate 400, interested community, that you would be able to feel comfortable supporting this. It doesn't really have any conflicts with your goals or your position with the PUC. I don't think they're going to hold it against us.
Mr. Sabi, I just like to say, again, thank you. I think this is really, I think it's a step forward. I think this is really important. But I think you also stated that some of the boroughs haven't signed on. You've been trying to educate them for the last 2.5 years. And, I think we've had this for maybe 2.5 days, and to sign on to something of support with, this is a 47-page, 48-page petition. It just, I think really to do our due diligence, I think, and this is my opinion, I just think there's needs more time to really look into this. And I understand that you don't believe that there's any conflicts, but that's something I think that we had to make a decision on our own.
I realize that, yeah. And I can't say that the 2.5 years was all wasted time in terms of elapsed time. I think we really focused on the important boroughs that we felt would be the first ones to sign on. So we didn't go out and try to reach out to all boroughs. So I'm not saying that 2.5 years was all education. There was a lot of background work on figuring out how to put this implementation plan together, learning ourselves from the New York group as to how this all works. So it wasn't just that we were trying to educate boroughs in the last 2.5 years.
And I understand that. I just was using that as an example of, I think we need some time to.
Sure. So yeah, if for some, if you feel like you need to defer and you can still do this in August, I would say go ahead and sign it and give it to us. We'll just keep it in our queue for when we do have the conversations about townships. I think that would still be worthwhile.
Yeah, I will say, Jimmy, that at least 3 of us are involved, or at least attend the RF 100 meetings. And so we're aware of this whole movement. It hasn't come up in front of this board for discussion because there hasn't been an ask. But I would like to take time to thank Ree Monahan for really coordinating, answering questions with Mimi and other people, and getting Bill lined up to come in. And she's shown real leadership to try to help the board understand what this is about and how it can affect us in a positive way. So thank you, Bill and Ree.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tessie.
Tessie.
Thank you, Rhea. And thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have before us the consideration of a submission of a letter of support for the petition of the boroughs listed the PA Public Utility Commission for the issuance of a declaratory order. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would,
I would move to table it so that we can study it a little more. I understand the urgency of it, but to Jimmy's point and Janine's point, we just got this, and I think none of us has seen the letter until tonight. I understand it, we can change the verbiage of it. But I would vote to table it so that we can have more time.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to table carries. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
you.
Thank you for coming and for
Thank you
putting
for
all of that
coming.
together. And thank you to Ree.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you both for compiling all of that in such short order.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
Next up on our agenda is the Ingersoll House, 1145 Stonehouse Road. We have a few things to consider. And I apologize, my computer is having a difficult time connecting to our Wi-Fi. But first up is the consideration of resolution 2024-22, which is the addition of the Ingersoll House to the Lower Gwinnett Township Historic Resource List and resource map. There is a memo included in our board packet that outlines, thank you, Jimmy, that outlines that this resolution would identify the record owner and the real estate, it goes through the whereas and the therefores, basically identifying
So legal.
basically identifying 1145 Stonehouse Road on our historic resource list. Are there any questions from the board?
My only question is, when you identify something on the historic registry, the historic resource list, what does that entail?
So it's literally a map with a list of accompanying of the properties that are on there so that it's crystal clear which ones fall under the historic resource protection standards. But it is simply a list being put in a list and marked on a map.
And so the historic resource standard, protection standards, that's already been adopted by the township.
Yes.
Any additional questions from the board?
Can you just summarize briefly what the protections are in that?
So I'll hit the real highlights here is that there's different regulations on what you can do in terms of distances from historic structures. The really important parts I think that are critical to the board is that if somebody ever wanted to demolish the buildings, a historic building, instead of going through a regular demolition permit process, after going through that, they would have to add a historic impact study to it, which is an extensive study about what history would be lost from the building going down. And the board would actually have to vote to approve the demolition permit. Normally the board doesn't have to get that involved when something goes up that way. There's also protections on the facade of the property in terms of what can be done in keeping with the historic character. It still does allow for things like additions, but it kind of restricts it more to stay in character with the rest of the house.
Is, maybe you don't know this, John, is a roof part of the facade? Would that be considered the facade?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Like the fate.
Okay. So if the roof needed repair, they wouldn't have to come to us to repair the roof?
Yeah, general maintenance that's consistent with the general character of the house is permitted. Place windows, doors, roof, things of that nature.
And for any interested buyers who are listening, we replaced the roof very recently. So there won't be a need.
It's not a representation or warrant.
Yeah, there you go.
As is,
Disclaimer.
yeah, there you go, there you go, Janine.
Just saying we did.
So as is, where is.
Still has it. We did replace it.
Are there any additional questions from the board?
No.
Any questions from the public? Comments? Just for clarity, and I apologize, my notes aren't loading. This motion is separate from the deed restriction?
Yes.
Okay. So we have just before us adding the Ingersoll House and Barn to the township's historic resource map. Like I make a motion. Pass resolution 2024-22, doing that addition. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The next up is the opposed? Okay, it's a 4-1, Michelle.
even put it on the map.
Next up is approval of a deed restriction that protects the property's existing structures against demolition and facade alteration in accordance with the township code. So all of that was included in our board packet. Are there any questions from the
Yeah,
board?
I have a question. So the house is going to need a kitchen. So is there going to be, I mean, is that adding on to the building? Is that restricted also?
I think you can just have a butter churn.
A pizza oven, there's a big.
Just a butter churn and a fire.
Now, you're going to need a lot of things to turn that place into a bed and breakfast
No doubt.
for any buyers who need ideas about it.
To answer your question, additions are permitted under the
You have so
code.
much-
It's kind of the nature that they have to stay in keeping with the character of the house when they're done. So their additions can be put on like a kitchen.
Yeah. Okay.
Do they have to come to the board for every, like, if they did want to put an addition on, or is it only if you're
As I,
changing the facade?
as I understand it, it's only for the more significant things that would involve the facade, but Neil, please, if
Mm.
you're getting. Correct.
So if they wanted to turn the barn into a discotheque, they could do that?
They'd have to look at the zoning regulations for use.
Are there any additional questions or comments from the board?
This, what this.
Sir? You have additional comments or questions?
A question?
Oh, okay, it sounds like a declaration.
No, is this doesn't require the same historic study when we're passing this, correct?
Correct. The study would only get triggered if somebody wants to demolish the property or significantly alter the facade.
Pursuant to the deed restriction?
So it's basically the deed restriction is tying in the township's historic ordinances to the deed.
Gotcha.
So
Any
it's
dis-
not a different regulation. It's just tying it to the land.
Gotcha.
And the potential purchasers who have this property been marketed to already know that this ordinance applies to this property. We're just putting it in the deed now.
Yes, very, very clearly.
Any additional questions or comments? Questions or comments from the public? Concerns? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the deed restriction that protects the property's existing structures against demolition and facade alteration in accordance with the township code. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
You gotta say nay.
You're supposed to say
Nay. Nay.
So next up is the consideration of permanent access easement to Old Bethlehem Pike. Included in our board packet is a memo outlining the easement recommendations. Basically indicating that the property lines will provide for the new owners with access from Stonehouse Road, and suggested that we also provide access to the property from Old Bethlehem Pike, and that we form this easement through the township's own open space. And it outlined where the access would be for both a driveway and a sewer, and the option of traveling through Springhouse Farms neighborhood to access both the house and to the barn. The staff identified the need for this temporary access easement for Old Bethlehem Pike, as the auction will take place before Old Bethlehem Pike Bridge replacement is complete. It goes forward to outline it. The maps are included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
Is this for both, Danielle?
Can we do both at the same time, or do I have to separate them?
Separate them.
Okay, so the first one is for the permanent access easement to Old Bethlehem Pike.
I have a question. Is there gonna have to be repaving to give them access to, I mean, how is that gonna work?
So right now, that driveway going from Stonehouse through is used for emergency vehicle access
Yep.
because of the weight restriction. The gravel driveway should not have to change at all.
Okay.
So that's going to stay as is. It'll just mean the owners can use that by right, essentially moving forward, so that even after the bridge is done, they can go out either side of the house.
And is the sewer gonna run underneath the drive? Is that sort of the plan?
Oh, it's already there.
It's already in
So
place. Okay.
that gravel was a sewer easement is kind of what it was there for in the first
Okay,
place.
gotcha. Thank you, John.
Any additional questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Concerns?
No.
Okay, so before us, we have consideration of the permanent access easement to Old Bethlehem Pike. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is the approval of a temporary access easement from Old Bethlehem Pike to Stonehouse Road during the bridge reconstruction on Old Bethlehem Pike. Included in our memo is the identification that there's going to be eventually a need for a temporary access easement for Old Bethlehem Pike as the auction. It goes forward and explains all of that parameters that I outlined before. There also is a map. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Concerns? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the temporary access easement from Old Bethlehem Pike to Stonehouse Road during bridge reconstruction on Old Bethlehem Pike. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you so much. Next up is consideration of resolution 2024-23, which is the submission of a grant. It's a multimodal grant for the Penland Station Trail. The memo is included in the board packet. I don't know if any staff want to give any explanation, but the Assistant Township Manager outlined a recommendation that we approve resolution 24-23. It outlines that the project would connect the Penland train station to Penn Ambler Park and the mixed-use development of Ambler Yards. It would be to improve pedestrian access and safety by installing a trail between Penn Ambler Park. It would continue along Penn Ambler Road to the intersection of Penn Ambler Road and Old Penland Pike. It outlined walks and extended to the south side of the intersection of the train station, ultimately completing the connection. The township was awarded $250,000 grant through Monco 2040 completion program in May. We'd use those funds to be the match for the multimodal fund grant. And this would authorize our township manager and staff to submit this grant application on our behalf. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2024-23, submission of the multimodal transportation fund grant in the amount of $290,372 for the Penland Station Trail. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Anyone opposed? No. Next up is consideration of resolution 2024-24, which is the authorization to submit an LSA or a Local Service Act grant in the amount of $930,000 for Ingersoll Park. Look, we are preparing an application to submit to DCED, Local Share Account Grant Program, in that amount to continue and finalize the improvements to the Ingersoll Park. The budget would include the installation of a picnic grove, memorial entry plaza, a top lot, batting cage, pavilion, pollinator garden, stormwater management facilities, and electric conduit for future improvements. There is no match required for this grant. In the event that the project is only partially funded, we would kind of assume responsibility for the remaining portion of the project. Our intention is to partner with the Lord Little League as well. This would authorize our township manager as well as assistant managers to sign the paperwork and submit the grant on our behalf. And township manager as well as assistant manager are making that as their recommendation. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question. Are we able to do any of this without knocking down the house? Yeah. I should have said Jim. I was just directing. I figured you'd be the guy to answer.
No, it's all right. So you can do some of this without knocking down the house, but the Memorial Entrance Plaza, the tot lot, the batting cage are the items that would need the building to come down.
So we're not asking for the grant.
We're not asking for
Where's that money coming from?
We're
If we
not-
Get this grant.
Mhm.
There's a horizon to the grant, right? We have to spend it in a certain amount of time.
Yes.
So are we gonna have to come up with the money to knock down the house if we get this grant money to use it in time?
Mimi could confirm this, but I believe there's money in the budget to demolish the house whenever the board decides that
Okay.
they would like to
We
do
have
that.
that built in? Okay, great. Awesome, thank you.
And didn't Senator Collette get $800,000 recently for this park.
Yes, she did.
So will this $930,000, I guess it,
So we
Great.
had put in an LSA grant about a year ago for a scope of work that included a new snack bar, concession stand, press box, paving the entire spectator area, expanding the parking lot, ADA parking, landscaping upgrades, and
Bathroom?
yeah, there's a bathroom in that building. I just glossed over that. It's the most important part. So we had put that in about a year ago. Maria Collette has let the township know that there's funding for essentially that scope, but not from LSA, from some other vehicle. And so we're putting this grant application in to essentially replace the one that we had put in a year ago, because the House hasn't acted on those LSA grants yet.
yeah,
So Senator Collette kind of funded all of that initial project.
The
So
first part.
So this is like the last phase of Ingersoll Park.
Okay.
and We're now applying for this grant to address that.
yeah,
That's-
that's what I was wondering. How far is all this going to go toward completing that park?
Essentially, everything on the master plans, if the township were to get this grant, everything on the master plan would be done with the exception of the traffic signal at the
Worcester.
point of Old Penland and Penland, and any improvements to the Worcester intersection with Penland Pike and the
Okay.
I'm sorry, and the McCormick House demolition.
Okay, very good.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments or concerns from the public? So we have before us the consideration is resubmit the local service LSA grant application to DCED in the amount of $930,000 for Ingersoll Park, resolution 2024-24. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is resolution 2024-25, revisiting the vesting period for defined contributions for the purchase retirement plan for non-uniform employees. Mimi, do you want to go over this?
So the township currently offers retirement benefits of two different types to our non-uniformed employees. For employees hired before 2014, they get a traditional government pension. Employees hired since 2014 are in a 401k style retirement plan. That there's two parts to. The township contributes to employees' retirement savings through the 401a plan. These are all just IRS code provisions. Employees have the option of saving themselves through pre-tax payroll deductions in a 457 plan. You put them together and it's pretty close to a 401k plan. The vesting period in the 401a plan extends out to 10 years. So if an employee were to leave, and it's a sliding scale beginning in year 6 through year 10. So if an employee were to leave in year 5, they wouldn't have received anything towards the retirement other than what they had just saved themselves. Our understanding now and looking back through the history is that the reason for that is there's a 10-year vesting period for the traditional pension. So when this new plan was originally set up 10 years ago, the idea was to just mirror that same timeline and not be giving an advantage to one retirement plan over another. So 10 years have passed. That is no longer an issue because the traditional pension plan is closed. Everybody in it has been here much longer than 10 years, or at least 10 years, and most of them much longer than that. So now we're looking at a vesting period that's much longer than normal for this defined contribution type plan. So we talked about this with the Investment Advisory Committee. Melinda Haldeman, our finance director, put a lot of time into pulling information together and looking at comparable plans. Mostly in the private sector, there aren't a whole lot of municipalities that offer a defined contribution plan, but there are some. So the staff's recommendation is that we reduce the vesting period to 5 years with no vesting in year 1, but from year 2 through 4, there would be a sliding scale of increasing vesting percentage by 25% a year.
Is this, can you just give us the number of employees? It would affect all future employees, but are we allowing any employees that were in this time frame be a part of this?
So everybody who's in the defined contribution plan could be impacted by that. I think there's only 2 employees right now that are at that 10-year limit that are fully vested. There are 2 more employees that are in that 5 to 10 year, so that where they're not fully vested now would become fully vested under this
Gotcha.
plan. And then obviously any of the current employees, the vesting period would be shorter and it would continue to apply to any future employees as long as this plan remains in effect without any other changes.
So as soon as we pass this, then it would be applicable to all of our employees.
All the non-uniformed employees,
Okay.
yes. The police are in a traditional pension, and then there's some of our longer serving non-uniform employees in the traditional pension. It applies to everybody else.
Okay. Any additional questions from the board? Any questions or concerns from the public? Just want to thank the staff and Melinda for taking a look at this. We know that this wasn't an easy task to resolve, but one that we felt prioritized our investment in our employees and our desire for them to feel that we want you here and we want to make sure that you feel welcome here. So I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-25, revising the vesting period for defined contribution money purchase retirement plan for our non-uniform employees. Is there a second? All those in favor? Thank you so much. Again, thank you guys for all your hard work with that. Next up is the consideration of our township employers engineers report, which is included in our board packet for the timeframe of June 25th to July 23rd, and then July 23rd to August 27th. And turn it over to Jim.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight 2 things. One, the pedestrian bridges along Bethlehem Pike. The second bridge where we had encountered the Ambler water main. It's been a long process, but the abutments are set and the bridge will be delivered and set tomorrow. So once that bridge is set, it should all wrap up pretty quickly. And then the other item is you approved the temporary easement through the Ingersoll House property for the replacement of the old Bethlehem Pike Bridge. We've been working with PECO. They have a gas main on the one side of the bridge. We, the township, have a sewer main on the other side, so we're kind of sandwiched between them. We've moved the bridge slightly to not impact the sewer main because it's encased in concrete and we really don't want to have to move that. So the PECO is going to need to relocate their gas main. So we're working with them on an easement. You guys will see that in a future meeting, and then at that point we'll bid the project.
Thank you. Are there any questions on our engineer report? The anticipation of the completion of the Bethlehem Pike pedestrian bridge after the installment, will it be good to go, or do you still have to do like other things?
After the bridge is set, they have to install sidewalk to each side and put in some ADA ramps. I would guess that's 2 weeks of work after.
So before the end of the summer, this will be done.
Yes.
Awesome. In time for school. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem.
Next up, we have a consideration of our traffic engineer report and update. I know the chat's not here, but included in the Brian Jones. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. I was looking at you and I was wondering. I apologize. The project status report for July 2024 is included in our packet. Are there any questions?
My only question is what's left with the spring house centers? Looks great, by the way.
Yes.
Everybody involved looks awesome.
Milling and pavement were completed last Friday. I believe it was Friday night they completed it. We're in the process of setting up the final inspections with PennDOT for road work and the signals. Aiming for that end of next week, early first week in August. And then we punch list items, hopefully the second week of August, wrapping this up by the beginning of school, which is, I believe, August 26th in Wissahickon School District. So
Yeah.
It's looking good that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Is there any way that so when you're headed down Norristown Road, cross over Bethlehem Pike onto Town Pike, when you sort of crest the little hill there after you cross over McKean, a ways down, you can see left turn is left. Can we get those signs any further up the road? Because I can't tell you how many mornings, every morning, actually, there's cars in the left lane that have to sneak into the right lane, and you miss the turn arrow. I guess people just don't realize that it's a left.
Comes a
only.
left turn lane, right?
Yeah, or is that a PennDOT issue?
That's a PennDOT issue, but that's something that definitely can be discussed at the final inspection with PennDOT.
Okay, because there is a yard armor further up. I think it's got the school crossing zone on it. You could almost put them on there.
Right.
I'm thinking about doing that myself one night.
Yeah,
Just
but
stand
that's
up and
definitely
pick a
something we can
flag.
discuss with PennDOT at the final inspections.
Yeah, it happens every morning, morning.
Okay.
Frustrating, that's all.
Yep.
Any additional comments on the traffic engineer?
Yeah, I'd also like to congratulate the work. It's come along slowly but surely. And I hope that now that intersection is going to be safe and easier to cross so that I don't have to keep avoiding it. It'll be less of a headache to go through. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Next up, we have our finance report for June of 2024. Are there any questions on that report?
I just have one, and I know that I've asked this before. I don't remember the answer. For the ARPA monies, we haven't spent it, but we've obligated it. Okay, so
We have not
only
obligated
a
yet.
couple months to figure that out.
I am hoping that we won't have to obligate it. I'm hoping that it will be spent.
Okay,
Okay, but if it's not, we will have to obligate it.
okay.
So I'm thinking that like by October, middle of October, Mimi and I will sit down and make sure that we have it obligated if it's not already out the door.
Okay.
Is the deadline for obligation December
December 31st.
of 2000? Okay.
So I had the same question as Janine. Are you using, the money has been part of the budget, the ongoing budget, or was it budgeted for a specific thing?
It is not budgeted for a specific thing, although through some of our capital projects, when we were doing the budget, we had put in there, oh, well, we could use ARPA monies for this, whatnot. So it was within our budget, but we can actually spend it to keep the township going in any way. So I would say that if some of those projects were moved forward, we should just move that money to do other things with it that we need to spend it on
Yeah.
earlier in the year.
And we still have some kind of reporting that's required for the money?
Yes, I have to report annually on it, and I have to list out what we spent it on and how it was spent and put in the checks and things like that. Yes.
Good.
If you have a question, you can come on up. You can just come on up. You just have to come to the microphone so they can hear you online.
I think this one gentleman may have addressed it. It concerned the signs on Norristown Road.
You just have to say your name. I'm sorry.
On what?
Your name.
Richard Cameron.
How you doing, Mr. Cameron? You just have to pick up the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Right.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Now we
All right,
can.
fine. He addressed it. The signs, they've been there for years. There've been problems there for years. And I want to thank the township for finally doing something about it. But before these people pack their bags up, you should address a few other things.
Okay.
Number one being the road markings.
Mhm.
They should have road markings starting from McKean Road on what each one of those lanes are for. Left, center, or right.
Mhm.
The other
Okay.
part
Yeah, that's-
is once they get across Bethlehem Pike, they have two decisions to make, but no markings on the road. But when you get up to the entrance to the shopping center,
Mhm.
they have a small sign. You can make a right, or you can, then you have to get over to the left lane. And coming east, east on Summitown Pike, you have the same problem. You come to Summitown Pike, there's no markings on the road.
Mhm.
Now, is that something they're going to do, or?
So that's what Mike was kind of asking our traffic engineer, and Mr. Jones is here with us tonight, and he was saying that at the end, it's another thing that he can bring up with PennDOT before they leave. So we kind of expressed the desire for them to clarify that, kind of to Mike's point and to your point, that we need to identify like which way the lanes are going, what you need to do, and further up before you get to Bethlehem Pike.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And while I'm on the subject, have another problem.
Mhm.
On Summitown Pike at William Penn Inn, you have the same problem. It's dangerous. You get traffic coming from all divisions, one into one lane, and it's very dangerous. So thank you for listening to me tonight. I appreciate it.
Mr. Jones, I have a question, sort of
Yes.
following up with
Yep.
Mr. Cameron's comment. Is the westbound on Norristown Road, when you get to Bethlehem Pike, is the right lane both a right turn and a straight? Or
No, right now, it looks like the center lane is straight. The right lane is for a right and the left lane is for a
That's
left.
what I'm trying to understand what the plan was from the traffic engineers. Yeah.
So is it a share, is the outside lane a shared through right lane? Is that what you're asking right now?
Yeah, because it sort of makes, I'll tell you how it's being used in practice over the last couple of days at least. That the right lane is straight and right. And that kind of makes sense because there's two lanes going across.
I
Right.
believe that's what it's gonna be as
Is
well.
that what- is that
Yes,
what
it's gonna be
gonna
carry through up to the shop at the
Right,
next
and I
signal.
guess that also makes sense because there's a no right on red sign. So it's not like you can do anything when you're at the intersection when it's red anyway, right, chief? Okay.
This came up today with a complaint that was filed by a person traveling on Norristown Road. And Jamie, you followed up with the contractor. It is not done. The markings on the road, you can see they're really kind of temporary. We were told to wait within the next week. There's going to be very well marked lanes of where you can be and cannot be.
Okay.
But they said today at our update meeting that he's not finished, he's not doing the final striping and marking and stuff like that until after they meet with PennDOT early next week and have a better idea of if anything needs to change. But to your question, that's right. It's a shared.
It's right
Yeah.
and straight in that right lane.
Yeah, and that happened early on and way back years ago when they were doing this design that they took that.
Then I apologize. I'm a week too soon. However, let me tell you though, if they're not done right, I'll be back.
I no doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. To our finance report. Are there any concerns with our finance report for June 2024? Okay.
Thanks, Melanie.
Thank you, Melinda. We have included in the board packet our invoice report. Are there any questions or concerns around our invoice report? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve our invoice report. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is anyone abstaining? No, okay. Next up is the approval of our minutes for our June 25th, 2024 meeting. Has everyone gotten a chance to review our minutes? Any questions, concerns, or corrections? Seeing none, everyone but Jimmy, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is supervisor liaison reports included in the board packet. I don't think there were any meetings. I think the EAC did not meet and I think that there was none documented. So staff updates. Is there any staff that have updates?
I have one quick one. I'm passing along information from Sandy Fight Hicks, who has been very pleased with the concert series' new location this summer at Penn Ambler Park. She said she's gotten a lot of good feedback. She's appreciating it. One huge advantage of Penn Ambler over Oxford Park is shade, which has been most welcome this year.
Awesome. We thank everybody that's coming out. And thank you, Sandy, for putting this event on in collaboration with the Park and Recs. Any additional staff updates? Anyone? Okay. Supervisor comment, Tessie?
Yeah, I'd like just to reemphasize that I hope the board will educate themselves on the issue that we were speaking with earlier with regards to the support for the petition to the PUC. And so maybe we can discuss that in the future. after people have had a chance to think about it. It is a rather long document to just take in a very short time. I'd also like to thank Jamie Warman for obtaining grants from the PICO, I guess, for the pollinator gardens in the parks. And I think that's really terrific. So I look forward to seeing that implemented. So thank you. That's all.
Me?
Just piggybacking on, the concerts in the park, we have a concert tomorrow night. And I believe we've rescheduled a concert so now we go another week, because there was a rain cancellation. So we'll go a little bit into August. So if you haven't checked out the new location, come on out. Thank you to Fred for getting the guys to help Sandy, the Parks and Rec Committee for all being there. So more excited that it finally gets to be implemented.
Jamie?
I guess really just to give a heads up, just since for the Montgomery County residents and all our residents from Montgomery County, right now, Montgomery County is having their comprehensive plan and they're reaching out for any public input. I know we also need public input for what we have, but if you're interested, just Google Monco 2050 and all the information's there.
Right, just to follow up on Jimmy's comments, we have our comprehensive plan out there and we'll welcome comments back on that. And just a thanks to the first responders who dealt with the house fire last night. And, you know, first responders in this township are just awesome.
Just want to echo everything that everyone said. I was going to speak to the first responders and thankful that they were there and everyone's safe. And the continued support of all of our staff and helping us accomplish all the things that we've been able to accomplish. We've glossed over the fact that we've gotten a tremendous grant for our Ingersoll Park and grants that we've been able to apply for and all of the things that we've accomplished. We gloss over it a little bit, but I think we need to recognize that we wouldn't be able to do any of it without our staff, and we're very appreciative of all their help and coordination in getting these things done. With that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned.